Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast. My name is Chris,
And my name is James.
and we are the Formula One Bros.
Just two twins with a love of F1 to share our thoughts on everything in the world of Formula One.
Yep, and it is another eventful weekend on the Caspian Sea in the capital city of Azerbaijan and the streets of Baku. And depending on who you are, who you root for, it was either an amazing day or absolutely dreadful. And speaking as loyal members of the Tifosi, it was hard for us to watch the race. But
gosh, it was tough.
Coming from Brittany was out of town, but she was texting me during the race, and as a Sergio Perez and Red Bull fan, she was absolutely elated for another perfect weekend for Red Bull. Lots of stuff to dig into.
Can't get much better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just right away, first impressions on the race, go.
Obviously, like Baku, like from the time that we've been racing in Baku, has just produced some awesome racing. And this week was no exception. I think of all the of the races that we've seen in the past, I don't think it was the most exciting, especially after the end of last year's race, and the craziness that happened last year, and especially how crazy the 2017 Baku race was. But it was still an awesome race. You don't really get a whole lot of great racing from city street circuits. But in this case, Azerbaijan, it always produces really good racing. And today was absolutely no exception to that. So it was despite the heartbreak for pretty much all the Ferrari engine cars, it was a really fun race. It kept you on your edge of your toes, and that's what Formula One's about. So I personally enjoyed it quite a bit. Purely as an F1 fan, it was a great weekend. Lots of really great, and in some cases surprising performances, like pleasantly surprising performances. So overall, it was a really good race, and it's got me very excited for Canada in 1 week from today.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think the thing that makes Baku exciting is the long straights. It's was up until we started racing in Saudi Arabia, the fastest street circuit on the course. There's a lot of variation, long straights, really tough, tricky, high speed corners, lots of opportunities for overtaking. It has everything. And this year, because Max Verstappen won this race, we've never had a repeat winner at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. In 2017, we had Daniel Ricciardo when he was driving for Red Bull. In 2018, it was Sir Lewis Hamilton. In 2019, it was Valtteri Bottas. 2020, unfortunately, it was not held due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but in 2021, it was Sergio Perez, and in 2022, Max Verstappen. And
who won it in 2016?
2016 was Nico Rosberg.
Oh, that's right.
So that's it's a great race, and it also has only up until this year, Charles Leclerc was the first repeat pole sitter as well. So it always
even
comes
in
up
qualifying. It's always been crazy.
Absolutely. It always comes up with some great racing. Speaking of great racing, let's dive right into it. So right from the start, Charles Leclerc on pole, Sergio Perez on the next to him on the front row. Sergio Perez immediately jumps Leclerc, puts Ferrari on the back foot.
Really great start from Checo. Oh my gosh, it was the dream start for him. Charles was on the clean side of the racetrack, and it seemed like it should be easy for Charles, but nah. Checo came in and really great start, was able to jump, and then at that point it was pretty much Checo in control of the race.
Was very quickly out of DRS threat from Leclerc. Leclerc actually never got DRS on Sergio Perez because it doesn't open until DRS isn't enabled until the start of lap 3, and by that point Sergio Perez was already well outside, and actually it was like starting right away on lap 4 when Max Verstappen was closing down and in DRS range of Charles Leclerc, and thus pursued a great multi-lap battle of the two drivers that I was honestly surprised that, given how quick the Red Bulls have been in a straight line, that Leclerc was able to defend against Max Verstappen.
Yeah, and that just goes to show you that, one, I think Ferrari are starting to kind of come back on equal level with Red Bull, in terms of, obviously the different cars have different strengths and different weaknesses. For example, Ferrari is more nimble through the corners, but Red Bull have that straight line speed. And so with Baku being a very great mix of the two, you've got those long straights in sector 1, sector 2 is very winding. And then again, sector 3, you've got that long back straight, or that long main straightaway, the pit straight. It suited both cars differently, which was really, really cool. Like, you would see Max get really, really close at the end of one lap in the beginning of sector 1, and then Charles would be able to pull away. And that would, and then once the second sector was over, Max would be able to pull right back up. And so it was really, really cool to see that battle. And you could, in real time, see the different strengths of the different cars, which made it that very, very entertaining.
Yeah, and it was cool too, because I mean I was watching Verstappen's onboard throughout that battle, and he would get up to, I mean, pretty close, within, a couple car lengths, maybe a half a car length, like only a couple tenths behind Leclerc at the end of the front straight, but Leclerc would pull that gap back out to almost a second through the middle sector. So it was a big thing, but eventually Max Verstappen pipped to Leclerc, and then on lap 9, Carlos Sainz went off, and it was funny because they were showing like a shot, like a camera shot that was at the chicane, like looking down at turn 5, and I saw like the Red Bulls come through, I saw Perez, Leclerc, Verstappen come through, and then I just saw Carlos go straight on, and I was like, that's not supposed to happen. And then the yellow flag came out, so I immediately knew Carlos had gone straight on. I thought he just missed the braking zone, but it was actually a hydraulic failure that put Carlos Sainz out of the race, brought out the VSC, and the strategy completely changed. Ferrari pitted Leclerc, which put him into third. Red Bulls had it at 1-2, but the Red Bulls stayed out, which proved to be a decisive decision.
Yeah,
that was redundant.
And that was a really, really great decision by Ferrari to pit Charles, because he ended up, once the VSC ended, he was closing in on the Red Bulls by a pretty substantial amount per lap. And the Red Bulls still had to pit. They eventually did. Charles was gifted the lead. And, honestly, after Charles was gifted the lead, had his engine not blown up, Charles was on the optimal strategy there. And then it was all of a sudden Red Bull was now on the back foot. So had Charles' engine not blown up, we very, very well could have seen Charles win the race and start to take back his restart his championship charge. Unfortunately, that is not how it played out.
Yeah.
Charles' engine blew up on the front straightaway. My first reaction when I saw that, because there was like a shot down the front straight, like looking at the cars coming at you, and then I just see Charles going slowly, smoke coming out of his car. And I literally was like, this isn't real. There's no way this is real.
Yeah. Before we get
cannot be real,
because I know we're going to talk about that a lot. The thing that I want to mention, just for maybe our viewers that are new to Formula One, something that I think it kind of makes sense when you explain it, but it doesn't really kind of stick the first time. If it is the fact that so in a regular race, green flag conditions, when you pit under green flag conditions, you lose about 20 to 25 seconds of track position when when it's just normal. And it depends on the circuit. At Baku, I think it was like 19 seconds that you lose comparison to other teams. But under a virtual safety car, because the drivers have to drive to a delta, which is a percentage slower than the average race pace. So they're driving much slower. So you only lose 8 to 10 seconds, 8 to 11 seconds in lap time. So that's why those moments like safety cars and virtual safety cars are crucial for strategy, because if they fall at the right time or the wrong time, you can lose or gain a lot of track position. And fortunately, it was Ferrari that capitalized on it, and they were able to gain a lot of track position. And by the time the Red Bulls pitted, Leclerc was well out in front.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was then neutralized, had already stopped, and it was going to maintain that way for the rest of the race. So Leclerc was in complete control of that race from that on.
2 weeks ago, we were sitting here complaining about how Ferrari strategists were screwing up and then they got it right. And it was great. They got it right. And then the car blew up.
Yep. So after the car blew
Can't
up,
win.
Lots of things maintained. We had another virtual safety car that came out because of Kevin Magnussen, which didn't really change the order of anything. You saw a couple people that had gaps pit for some fresh tires, but nothing really changed about anything. You had some really tight midfield battles, specifically with like Alpine and Aston Martin, AlphaTauri and McLaren. And finally, the last thing that I want to touch on in our race summary is the team orders drama at McLaren that really played out in the closing laps with Daniel Ricciardo behind Lando Norris. So essentially what was happened is they were following the Alpine of Fernando Alonso, and both were chasing, both had fresher tires, both were quicker, but we obviously know that Fernando Alonso is incredible at defending. And they told Daniel Ricciardo that if Lando can't get by, they would give him the place. And then they told Lando, hey, if you can't get by, we're going to give Daniel the place. But if Daniel can't get by, we're going to take this place back. So it was essentially Daniel was going to try and have a shot at this thing. And it didn't happen. And Lando and lots of confusion with the team orders. It was really, really weird. Lots of drama. But the way that it ended up finishing was Daniel Ricciardo ahead of Lando Norris. So Daniel Ricciardo was chasing Fernando Alonso. Lando was trying to get by. They told Lando that they were going to allow him by, and they ended up not. They saw it hold position, even though Lando was much faster. Lots of confusion there, lots of drama. And this is all playing out in the backdrop of the rumors of Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo's contract. Is he going to stay at McLaren? Is he going to leave? You know, he's having a really tough time at that team. All of that, this sort of played out. And it was the first time that we really saw conflict, like very public conflict between Norris and Ricciardo. So yeah, that was a really interesting thing to see in the closing laps of the race.
Yeah. It almost like, obviously it wasn't to this extreme, but it kind of reminded me of like the drama we saw with the whole multi-21 situation in Sepang in 2013 with Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel. Obviously Lando didn't like disobey orders and it became this whole thing, but it was like, ooh, it's been a while since we've seen team order drama like that. Also kind of remind me like Singapore 2019 with Seven Charles, 2016 with Lewis and Nico. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, I was very curious
to watch.
Yeah, the first thing that I thought of was multi-21, and so it was really interesting to watch that play out. But it ended up with Daniel Ricciardo for the first time this season beating Lando Norris to the line. They were on different strategies from the beginning. Daniel started on hards. Lando Norris started on mediums. So Daniel had to go long on the hards, So yeah, they just ended up on different strategies, and that's kind of the way that it played out. So now let's go ahead and get into our main takeaways if you want to start us off.
Yeah. So I don't really have that much in terms of takeaways that I haven't already mentioned or that isn't in my hot take. But it's just like, at least this weekend, having 4 of the 5 DNFs be Ferrari engines, yeah, not good. And there are only 6 Ferrari powered cars.
Mm-hmm.
You have the 2 Ferraris, the 2 Haas's, and the 2 Alfa Romeos.
Mm-hmm.
Both Ferraris retired, a Haas and an Alfa Romeo all retired. 3 of them were for the same issue.
Yep.
3 of them were the same issue. And then Carlos had the hydraulic issue. But yeah, it just did not look good for the Ferrari powered cars. And everyone in preseason testing was like, these are going to be the most reliable cars. They've had no reliability issues in winter testing. They're the fastest. They are going to be the engine to beat. And now we're sitting here like, oh, yikes.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest, one of my biggest takeaways.
Yeah. Well, and on the other side of the coin, at the beginning of the season, we said that Red Bull was going to have a lot of work to do because of their reliability problems, and now they look
they've done that work.
they have, and so it's just wild how the pendulum swings in Formula One. And I have my first takeaway was very much the same. Ferrari had some soul searching to do. 4 out of 5 DNFs on the day were Ferrari powered cars. The only Ferrari powered cars to finish were Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen, and both of them finished outside the points.
Not Kevin, it was Mick Schumacher.
Oh, Mick Schumacher, yeah. Kevin Magnussen retired, but both of them finished outside the points. Meanwhile, you have Pierre Gasly and both Red Bulls finishing in the points. Yuki Tsunoda was on for a points victory had it not been for his rear wing, which we will get into in a sec. My next one is Mercedes are starting to put a nice little championship challenge for P2 and constructors. They have been now, I think they're still very far away from having a title contending car. And I don't think that they're going to have a title contending car this year, but with the improvements that car has made, they're nipping at Ferrari's heels a little bit. And, I always say that, the best are there to take advantage of others' misfortune. And if Ferrari has much more misfortune, Mercedes are definitely going to deserve P2 in the championship before too long.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, have to talk about Mr. Sebastian Vettel. Have to talk about him after having just a really, really rough start to the season. I think this season and 2020 were probably, maybe 2014 a little bit too, but, one of his worst seasons. He was able to finish. He finished 5th, 6th. Pierre was P5, but he finished 6th place, which was a really, really, really strong finish for him. I was really happy to see him up there. And another person I was really, really happy to see finish well, obviously, Mr. George Russell had a really, really great race. Another podium for him. It's his 3rd podium of the year. So as much as I have made my dislike for Mercedes very clear, I love George Russell more than I hate Mercedes. So I absolutely love the fact that I got to see, we get to see George Russell doing so well at Mercedes. And again, I mean, consistently talking about how George Russell is every man and more that Mercedes hired him to be. So
yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think I have instead of calling him Mr. Saturday, I've been calling him Mr. Consistency, because he is that for Mercedes. Lewis is obviously the greatest of all time. He's an amazing driver, but George is proving, he's the only driver in the field to not finish outside of the top 5. And while a lot of others would have that same record were it not for DNFs, Lewis has finished outside on the top 5 on merit. So, I think George is putting himself together a nice little season so far, and I can't wait to see where he goes. And wouldn't it be something for him to get his first F1 win in 2 races time in the UK? I think that would be really special to see. One can only hope. That would be amazing. My next thing is we have to talk about Nicholas Latifi.
Yeah.
He had a horrid race today. First things first, before the race even started, he had a grid infringement, which is basically like he still had team members and crew members working on his car when they were no longer allowed to. So he was given so he infringed upon the start procedures for the race. This was even before the formation. This was before the formation lap. So he was immediately from the start of the race gifted a 10-second stop go penalty, which means he had to come in to the pits, be stationary in his pit box for 10 seconds without the team working on the car before being released. And so that was like right off the bat. And then he got a 5-second time penalty for ignoring blue flags, which was right as Pierre Gasly and Lewis Hamilton were in the middle of their battle. And I would say completely screwed Pierre Gasly. Like Lewis Hamilton was going to catch him anyway because Lewis Hamilton was on fresher tires in a faster car. He was going to make that overtake, but it was definitely aided by Nicholas Latifi just straight up not getting out of Pierre Gasly's way.
Yeah.
And so with that and all of the times that he's been crashing, him and Lance Stroll, I said this after Australia, him and Lance Stroll need to do some soul searching because Lance Stroll crashed twice on the same lap in qualifying. And unfortunately, he had to finish. He could not finish the race because of a power unit problem. So that was not his fault, but nowhere near on Sebastian Vettel's pace right now at Aston Martin.
Yeah, which I've heard a rumor. Speaking of Nicholas Latifi, I don't know if you've heard this rumor, but I've heard rumors that, and I actually think this would be awesome if this happened. Nicholas Latifi, as much as I never want to talk about a driver being dropped mid-season, but there are rumors that Nicholas Latifi could potentially be dropped mid-season, and now that leaves the question, who are they going to replace? The biggest rumor that I've heard is that Alpine is going to, kind of how Red Bull have done with Alex Albon, on loan, going to give Oscar Piastri to Williams and have Oscar Piastri finish the rest of the season.
Yeah, I've heard that rumor too.
Which
and I think
I would hate for a driver to be dropped mid-season, but everyone knows how talented Oscar Piastri is. And that would be so awesome if Oscar Piastri could finally get his chance to race in Formula One, not just for testing, but actually race in F1, which I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would be great. I think it's long overdue. And the other thing about Latifi is because of finishing positions, he's technically, if the championship were to end right now, he would finish lower than Nico Hulkenberg, who raced twice.
Yeah.
He would technically finish lower than Nico Hulkenberg, which is the same as Nikita Mazepin in 2021, technically finishing lower in the standings behind Robert Kubica, who only did one race for Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah.
So just what a mess that is. And so again, obviously, as you said, they are rumors, but I think there's nobody that deserves a seat in Formula One currently than Oscar Piastri. That would be absolutely stellar. Now that we're getting into the summer months, I think Nicholas Latifi, we are very slowly approaching the summer break, which is end of August, or which is end of July. So we are very slowly approaching the summer break. So I think he's going to be under ever increasing pressure. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and honestly, I would not be surprised if talks have not already happened. At least a conversation, between Otmar Safnauer and Jos Capito.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yep. So those are our big race takeaways. So let's head on to our next segment, which is our weekly top 10.
Yeah. So with this segment, as always, anything goes. There are no rules. We've ranked a whole bunch of stuff in the top 10. Anything goes. We've had weather. We've had obviously drivers. We've had racing conditions. We've had stewards. We have officiating. We've had everything. So in this week's top 10, we are starting off in 10th place with the Baku City Circuit.
Mhm.
I mean,
Just
it's a great racetrack, produced some great racing.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we've already pretty much covered that at the top of the show. So well done, Baku.
Yes. Great racetrack, produces some great racing every single year. And so far, not a repeat winner, which is pretty awesome.
Mhm.
All righty. Now to 9th place, we have Alpine, which Alpine's like, they've kind of been the dark horse so far this season. I feel like every single top 10 we've done, Alpine's been there, or someone, either a driver, Fernando Alonso or Esteban Ocon, have been in there. So Alpine at number 9, they had a really, really, really good weekend for them. Was it a double points finish for them?
It was a double points finish. Esteban Ocon in 10th and Fernando Alonso in 7th. And I think of all of the midfield teams, I'm not going to include Mercedes in this because they're like not a top team, but they're also not a midfield team. I don't think, because I think there's a significant enough gap between them and McLaren, who's currently in 4th in the championship. But I think McLaren is 4th in the championship because Lando has put in some otherworldly performances. But Alpine, I would say, is probably the most consistent performing midfield team of the bunch right now.
Oh, absolutely.
I think Esteban and Fernando Alonso, even though Alonso right now is outperforming Ocon, they're on very similar levels.
Yeah.
So
and with Fernando outperforming Esteban's still having a really decent season.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. Super consistent on their part, and that's good. That's good. If you're not like super like really paying attention, you kind of forget about them, just because they've just been so consistent, which is really, really good for them. Yeah. I think at the beginning of the season, we were thinking, wow, Alpine's like really worse off than we thought. But they're doing really well. And I think they're better setting themselves up for the rest of this technical regulations era than a lot of people think.
Yep, I agree. Moving on to 8th place, we have good old Yuki Tsunoda. Now, if you look at his finishing place, you would think,
yikes,
Christian James, why do you have Yuki Tsunoda up here? He finished 13th. But he was running P6 before the most bizarre rear wing failure
it's like
I've ever
half
seen in Formula One. If you haven't seen the image, I mean, Yuki, he posted it on his Instagram. Go take a look at it. But tried to open the DRS and only half of the wing DRS open. It literally broke the rear wing flap in half. I've never seen that. I've seen rear wings that have fluttered. I've seen rear wings that have been stuck open, that have been stuck shut. Some that have completely dislodged. I've seen it all, but I've never seen a rear wing break in half. And it's really unfortunate. And he ended up P13 after running in it would have been a great double points finish for AlphaTauri. We've talked about Yuki Tsunoda a couple times. I think he totally is deserving his seat at AlphaTauri. So I don't want to talk about that again. What I do want to talk about is a little bit of flag terminology that happened. Upon that happening, we got something called the black and orange flag that Yuki Tsunoda received. What that is, it is a black flag with an orange circle in the middle that is often accompanied with on the flashing lights around the track that is often accompanied with the driver's number being flashed up there. So it would have been a flashing 22. And essentially what that means has been there's been some sort of mechanical failure, some sort of something on the car or with the driver that requires immediate attention in the pits, and it is required or you will be disqualified. So he was forced to go into the pits and have it repaired. We'll get on the repair in a little bit because this will feature in another segment of ours, but it unfortunately ruined a really great race that Yuki Tsunoda was putting together.
Yeah. So up until that failure, he was running a really great race. In seventh place, we have Mr. Charles Leclerc. Mm-hmm. Very similarly to Yuki Tsunoda, and the part of the reason why we don't have either Yuki or Charles higher is because of car malfunctions. Unfortunately, Charles was not able to finish the race, but up until his car exploded, he was on pace to win the race. He had the optimal strategy. He was able to stick with Sergio Perez and defended very, very brilliantly from Max Verstappen for quite a few laps in arguably a faster Red Bull. So really, really, really good drive. And it was nice because he was patient, very consistent, and then they were able to capitalize on that VSC, were able to pit, boom. It was worked out perfectly. Unfortunately, though, his car exploded. So the reason why we don't, that's kind of the reason why we don't have him higher. Fortunately, though, that wasn't his fault. That was not driver error. It was something that was completely unexpected, but really, really great drive from Charles. Heartbreaking end for him as well.
Yeah, he definitely loses marks too because of his start. Just starting on pole. Yeah. You know, Sergio didn't get as good of a launch as Sergio Perez, locked it up into turn one, somehow managed to keep it out of the wall because it looked like he was going straight for it. Somehow kept it out, but that, it flat spotted his tires. It put him on the back foot. So not a great start to the race, but qualified on pole, was, fastest or second fastest in every practice session. Just put himself together. Put himself together a really good weekend up until his power unit failure. So
yeah. So bravo to him. In sixth place, we have someone we haven't really talked about a whole lot in this segment, Daniel Ricciardo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he definitely deserves some props. Started 12th, finished 8th. First time this season out finishing Lando Norris. Was very defensive when it came to Lando Norris, who was trying to overtake him in the closing laps. Just put in a really quietly really good race, and I think what did it was having really strong pace on the hard tires initially, being able to go long on those hard tires, make it really effective. The team was able to capitalize on the VSCs. Just put together a really great race, ended up ahead of Lando Norris, couldn't quite get ahead of Fernando Alonso. Had he been able to get ahead of Fernando Alonso, I think he'd be higher on our list. Mm-hmm. Just put together a really great race for him, something that he's needed and a result that he's not had since Australia, since his home race, which was 5 races ago now, if you can believe it.
Doesn't seem like it. All righty. In 5th place, whoa, what just happened? Sorry. Something weird happened on my end. In 5th place, also finishing 5th place, Pierre Gasly.
Yeah.
Very strong race. And up until like the last couple laps, when that last little bit of the race, when Lewis passed him, he was in 4th place. Mm-hmm. It was a really, really great weekend. And this season has kind of been a very up and down start, more down than up for Pierre Gasly. But him finishing P5 today was stellar. So absolutely awesome place for him. It was tough. This top 5 was tough, and you'll see why we weren't able to put him higher. But But yeah, really, really great race for Pierre
Yeah.
Gasly.
The thing with Pierre too is like you said, he did have a really down start of the season, but now it looks like he's getting back to the form that he had all season last year.
Yeah.
And I think that is also that's obviously him because he's a fantastic driver. But I also think, Yuki Tsunoda was running really well too, before his rear wing failed. And so I think too, that also is indicative of the progress that AlphaTauri as a team is making on that car.
Yeah.
So really strong performance from Pierre Gasly today.
Yep. And up next in 4th place, we've already praised him so far once in this episode, but George Russell. Russell.
And we will stop talking about him as soon as he stops proving to be as consistent and amazing as he is, but that's not happening. So we're going to keep talking about him.
Yeah.
George Russell definitely deserves a spot in our top 5. I mean, because he hasn't finished outside the top 5 all season.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely great weekend for George. Stunning race. Great to see him up on the podium. So,
and right now at this point of the season is outpacing Lewis Hamilton on merit. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, we posted a TikTok saying that George Russell is better than Lewis Hamilton, and that got a lot of controversy.
Got a lot of heat.
But right now, I mean, you have to say that that's holding true, at least at the moment. I think Lewis had some extenuating circumstances and that his lower back pain, and we'll get on to Lewis and later on in our top 10. But George is just right now just outpacing Lewis.
Yeah. All right, in 3rd place for the first podium position, we have Sebastian Vettel, and we haven't talked about this guy in this segment a whole lot this season, but he finished 6th today after it's been a very rough start to the season for Seb. Today was a very, very encouraging finish for him. Very excited to see him finish as high as he did. At one point, I texted Chris. It was like right after, it was soon after like the whole Ferrari engine failure. We were both kind of like, well, man, just turn off the race. Like, this is not fun anymore. I'm not enjoying this. Not having a good time. All that kind of stuff. But I was like, wait a minute. But Sebastian Vettel's in 6th place right now, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So really, really great to see him finish as high as he did.
Especially at a track that he does really well at. So it was really good to see. I mean, and just to give you context for the beginning, how his season went, he missed the first 2 races because he had COVID, came back, DNF'd in Australia in his first race back, just driving a refrigerator of a car at the beginning of the season. So Aston Martin has made a lot of progress. Sebastian Vettel quickly now getting back up to pace. And it's great. It's good to see him up there. He's driving like classic Sebastian Vettel. And I'm really happy to see him up there. So we have to give him 3rd place.
Yeah. In 2nd place, we have Sir Lewis Hamilton. And I'll tell you, it was really nice to put him this high up. He did not finish higher than George. I know we have him above George. But the reason why we have him so high is because he was dealing with so many issues, like his back. His back was absolutely killing him by the end of the race. Was still able to put on a really, really great charge to the end, despite the pain that he was in from the absolutely violent porpoising on the car. So really, really strong race for Lewis, and for someone who is also like Sebastian, really had a struggle in these first few races, has really been struggling these first couple races. So really, really great drive from Lewis.
Yeah. I think it's easy to be like, he was in a little bit of pain. He finished 4th, but if you go back and look at the videos of him trying to get out of his car after the race.
Oh, he could barely do it.
He had to get help getting out of his car. He was in so much pain. And I think for those that don't know why, it's because, Mercedes are trying to run their car a little bit lower to get more performance out of it. And that is causing a porpoising problem that is just slamming the deck of the car on the ground. And all of that compression repeatedly, lap after lap, takes a toll on you. And I cannot imagine. I've never felt back pain so bad that I couldn't move. I could not imagine experiencing that amount of pain doing a Grand Prix distance and finishing fourth. Like that has just got to be the most excruciating thing ever. And he deserves all of the praise for that. Just another reason why Lewis Hamilton is one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time.
Yep. All righty. And now in first place, yet another perfect weekend, Team Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't get, I mean, there's not much to say about that. I mean, it really was a perfect weekend for them.
Mm-hmm.
Checo finishing second with a fast slap, Max winning. They took away the maximum amount of points on the weekend. So, yeah, they're obviously number one. Really, really good job for the Red Bull team.
Not much more to say. They've been quicker than Ferrari for the past several months, for the past month and a half. I think the pendulum is starting to swing back towards Ferrari's direction a little bit more circuit specific, but I think the pendulum has started to swing back toward in favor of Ferrari. But in terms of pace, not necessarily the championships, but they picked up the pieces when Ferrari just completely, imploded on themselves. And yeah, I mean, they walked away with a perfect weekend. You can't put them anywhere other than first.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All righty. We're going to go on to our next topic, our biggest winners and losers of the weekend. We're going to start with our biggest losers first of the weekend. And I'm just going to throw it out right away. Ferrari, biggest loser.
Yeah. I mean,
probably the biggest loser.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, they're absolutely no words. I said after Monaco that Baku in Canada and Great Britain were going to be crucial races in the championship. Because it's a lot of different circuits. It's circuits that Ferrari need to be able to do well at. We get to our first race that, I think is really going to start to be crucial, and they completely bin it. And not only just from a Scuderia Ferrari Formula One team perspective, but also from a power unit perspective. They have 4 DNFs out of the 6 cars that they run.
And 3 of which were the same issue.
Yeah. So it's just, something is happening on the power unit side of that operation. And I don't know if it's an upgrade. I don't know. It has to be an upgrade, because they brought an upgrade to Miami and then to Spain. In Spain, Charles's engine blows. And then in Baku, both engines blow. So I'm wondering if it has something to do with the update, the upgrade to that car, because the upgrade is now on all of the cars. So part of me is wondering if this upgrade is to the power unit is not working the way that they intended. So they definitely have a lot of soul searching to do at that team. And in that thing, I have more to say about Ferrari, but I'm going to save it for later.
Yeah. So that was really my biggest loser. What are some of your big losers of the week?
It has to be Lance Stroll, Nicholas Latifi. They had horrid weekends. Lance Stroll didn't set himself up for success for putting it in the wall once, just with a doink on the rear wing or on the front wing, that he was able to drive it back to the pits, and then just on a slow lap, bend it in the wall, and he was out of qualifying in Q1. There's no reason that you should be doing that. Yuki Tsunoda is going to come away with this as a little bit of a loser. I can't help, but that's just to no fault of his own, because the rear wing. Um, yeah, but I mean, any other on the weekend is completely over. I would also say Alfa Romeo,
Mhm.
because despite they've had some wicked pace at the beginning of the season, and had Guan Yu Zhou finished, they would have both finished outside the points.
Mhm.
So Alfa Romeo was super, super quick at the beginning of the season, with Bottas just raking it in qualifying. And unfortunately just, is not delivering now the way that they had been earlier in the season. I think that's more from, this is reflecting the true pace of that car, than taking a step backwards. But, they definitely have, some work to do.
Yeah. So let's go on to our biggest winners of the weekend. Obviously, I'm going to throw Mercedes in the hat. Biggest winners,
Mhm.
finishing third and fourth. Um, they were the second fastest team at the end of the race. So
Yep.
obviously, Mercedes, big winner. Also, obviously, Red Bull as well.
Yeah, those are some big winners. Fernando Alonso continues to impress in that Alpine. Pierre Gasly is a huge winner coming out of the season, and Sebastian Vettel is a huge winner. We've already talked about both, but I think those two drivers are in positions at their teams where they are starting to get the maximum out of those cars and starting to show where the pace of those teams can be.
Yeah.
So I think they have to. And Pierre Gasly was buzzing after the race. He had a lot of positive things to say in the media pen. So both of them have to walk away from this race with, in really good spirits, especially with Sebastian Vettel, considering how the season started for him. So
Mhm.
big winners for them, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we'll move on to our next topic, our super ultra mega spicy hot takes of the week. And I have two. I have two hot takes. But one of yours goes along with your second one that you have on the list. So I'm gonna say my first one. Um, I personally think Fernando Alonso is the best driver on the grid. Because if we were in a spec series like IndyCar or NASCAR, or all the cars were on equal level, or he was in one of the best cars like a Red Bull or a Ferrari, I think Fernando Alonso would be wiping the floor with everyone.
Yeah, he has
I mean, that the Alpine is just not good. It's consistent, but consistently not great. And Fernando Alonso constantly is consistently outperforming that car way more so than any other driver in on the grid. I think at this very moment right now in time, Fernando Alonso is the best driver on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, he drives and defends with a veracity that not many people do. Um, he's very cheeky in his comments with his rivals. He's playing the mind games. It's like classic Fernando is back.
Mm-hmm.
While also operating at a level that is just one of the best team players I've ever seen in Formula One.
Oh,
So
him and Esteban's relationship
yeah,
is awesome.
yeah, it is. And so to see this new and improved Fernando Alonso, the same Fernando Alonso that we saw last year, maybe with a little bit more ferocity, is great to see. It's great for the sport. And just a stat on him today, he officially has the longest career in Formula One, and that was a record previously held by Michael Schumacher. And now Fernando Alonso has that.
Yep. Gosh, another Schumacher record being beaten.
Yep.
All right.
Um,
Take it away. You have three hot takes listed. After
yeah.
your second one, I have a hot take.
So my first one is the vibes at McLaren seem really, really off. I mentioned this a little bit, how there was like a lot of beef between Lando and the team and Daniel and the team and team orders today. And it all seemed really weird. And the vibes just over the past couple weeks, with everything, all the rumors swirling around Daniel Ricciardo leaving McLaren, it's and it's a lot. The vibes are really off. The car is massively under delivering considering past performances of previous iterations of the McLaren cars. Ricciardo is showing no progress compared to last year as rumors continue to swirl about his future at the team. Zach Brown, the team principal, has expressed openly his displeasure with Daniel's performance, especially and as he has even named drivers to replace Daniel should he leave, being Pato O'Ward or Colton Herta.
Mm-hmm.
So
also, I'm going to pause you right there. I'm sorry if you hear Chewbacca in the background. My dog is getting fed right now, and he doesn't really know how to bark. So he shouts like Chewbacca. So if you hear Chewbacca in the background, don't worry. It's just my dog getting fed. He gets really excited.
Yeah. And then so I think something needs to change, and only McLaren know what the right answers are, but something has to. So I don't know what that is. I think everybody, it's easy for us on the outside to sit here and say, oh, well, they just got to let Daniel go, or, Zach Brown's got to go, all of these things, yada, yada. Maybe they should stop focusing on sponsorships and start chasing car performance. All of these things, it's easy to sit here and say, but only at the end of the day, they're the only people that know, but something has to, and it's real. The vibes are whack right now at McLaren.
Yeah.
My second hot take is if this whole thing that's happening with Ferrari that happened here and in Spain and in Monaco, this is nothing new. It is nothing new with this team. This has been a pattern with Ferrari for years, and it is continuing to exist, even with all of the personnel restructuring that Binotto has put in place over the past couple of years. After the disaster of 2020, Mattia Binotto had completely restructured the team, the way that everything works, and we're still having strategy problems. We're still having power unit failure problems. We're still having double DNFs on crucial weekends, constantly letting down the Tifosi. This is a fundamental problem that is not something that is not happening correctly at that team. And ultimately, the buck stops with Mattia Binotto. Now, I'm not calling for his head. Obviously, he's been a great team principal since Maurizio Arrivabene has left. But he is the ultimate person that is responsible for answering these questions and that is responsible for this criticism. So he has to deal with it. This is nothing new with Ferrari, and it's really frustrating to watch all of this continued promise being undelivered upon.
Yeah. Now, my hot take, also the reason, because my hot take goes with Ferrari. However bad this situation may be at this current moment, I still think I've seen a lot of comments on social media of people just saying championship over, it's done, let's move on to next season. It's only been 5 races. Granted, we only have 17 left, but we still have 17 races. A lot can happen in 17 races. Think back to 2012 with Red Bull. Red Bull didn't get their first podium until race 4, and they won the championship. So it is still way too early to say championship over for them. I still think they proved today in Baku that despite their engine failure, they are closing up that gap pace-wise with Red Bull to the point where I think now they're back on level pegging with Red Bull. And once they figure out this reliability issue that they're having, I think it's game on. I mean, you look at Ferrari at the beginning of the season, and everyone was writing off Red Bull after the first 2 races when Max DNF'd in like 2 of the first 3 races. One of those races was a double DNF for Red Bull. It was a horrible start to the season for Red Bull. And look where they are now.
Yeah.
Absolutely demolishing everyone in the championship.
Yeah.
So I think it is way too early to say to say championship over. If we come back after the summer break and this is still happening, then maybe, yeah, it's okay. It's championship over. Let's move on to 23. But it's still way too early. There's still a lot of season left. Granted, the time of us saying, oh, there's still plenty of season is dwindling, because eventually it's going to be like, okay, we don't have that much left. So I don't think it's championship over for Ferrari. I think they can still make a very good championship run.
I think we're learning from our previous episode, because I remember after Australia when Max's car failed again, I was like, yeah, championship over for Red Bull. Like, Ferrari has this in the bag. You know, they look impervious, da, 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 da. And then now it's completely changed. So I think we have to. But, you know, despite all that, right now, Red Bull is tasting the champagne, and Ferrari's having champagne problems. So, you know, they have a long way to go. And like I said, it's going to be crucial over the next couple races, but yeah, not quite over for Ferrari yet. And I think we learned our lesson with counting out Red Bull in the early part of the season. My last hot take, and our last hot take between the two. It's
not really a hot take. It's like absolutely true.
Yes, it is absolutely true. But F1 and the FIA, they usually, when there's a problem with the cars, they usually don't intervene. They're very, unless it, you know, comes to like, you know, safety with crashes, they're a little bit more hands-on, but they've traditionally with, you know, development, aerodynamic development, they're very hands-off. But the F1 and the FIA have got to step in to help teams solve this porpoising problem. And I'm not talking about, you know, giving teams advantages, helping teams along, you know, and I think and I'm not sitting here saying, well, you know, I think a lot of people are going to say, well, other teams have figured it out. Why can't, you know, some teams have figured it out. Why can't other teams? You know, that's on them to do it. I would normally agree. But when it comes to driver safety, like, I'm thinking, I saw images of the images that I saw of Lewis Hamilton getting out of his car today were absolutely shocking. And that should be very upsetting, because not only just for in the moment, what is this going to look like? You know, Toto Wolff has said now that, you know, he might miss Canada because his back is so out of whack right now. He had back problems all weekend, you know, and now Toto Wolff is saying that, you know, might have to miss Canada. And this is becoming a huge, huge problem for these teams. And I think Formula One has to step in, you know, especially for the teams like Mercedes, like Ferrari and AlphaTauri that are still dealing with mega porpoising problems. They have to step in and issue some sort of technical directive, some sort of something that kind of pushes the development of the car into a very specific window to prevent this from happening. Maybe unify the floor design, make it more of a spec floor design. Something has to be done, because it is really upsetting to watch.
Yeah. Well, here are my thoughts on that. And Fernando Alonso spoke up about it after the race. And I agree with him to a degree. I do think, in my personal opinion, yeah, it is something that, okay, some teams are dealing with it, some teams are not. Okay, the teams who are not dealing with it, they're ahead of the ball. The teams who are still dealing with it, it's their job to fix it. But and I absolutely agree with that. I think it should be on the teams to fix the issue. But the floor and everything that's causing that to happen is actually, I think there is, like, you're only allowed to manipulate the floor but so much based off of the technical regulations. You're only allowed to manipulate the floor so much. I think what the FIA could do is loosen up the technical regulations on the floor to allow more development and changing things up a little bit, that you know, teams can play around with it a little bit to help eliminate that porpoising. Because some teams came into testing doing it, with a new floor. And then it was like, well, that goes against the FIA regulations. So I personally think it is up to the teams to solve the issue, because not every team is having this issue. And maybe it sucks. Maybe they just need to raise the ride height. But at the same time, also, I think the FIA absolutely could step in and say, hey, play around with the floor a little bit.
Yeah.
Open it up for regulation a little bit.
I have two things on your point, which are, I understand that Formula One is a constructor sport. It is always up to the teams. But when it comes to driver safety, I mean, we saw all of the things that went through, all of the investigations that went through after Roman Grosjean's crash. I'm not saying this porpoising problem is nearly as big as Roman Grosjean's crash, but when it comes to driver safety, the FIA and Formula One have an obligation to step in.
Oh yeah, and that's why I mentioned the FIA. While yes, I do think it's the team's responsibility, but I also, the FIA should, do something about the floor regulations, because right now there's not a whole lot the teams can do with the floors.
The second thing that I think is, it's not the under part of the floor that is causing the problems. Porpoising is going to happen in any ground effect sport. It happens in endurance championships. It happens in IndyCar. It happens in every series. And it's not the under part of the floor that is causing the problem. It's the ability to seal the underfloor on the sides of the car with the vortexes that you create. And that all comes from overbody aero.
Yeah.
That's what needs to be regulated.
Well, that's what the side of the floors, that's what, because we saw that in testing, the FIA was like,
right,
you can only do but so much. I think the FIA should just be like, have at it, solve it.
No, well, I think, yeah, they need to loosen up the regulations, sure, but I think they need to loosen it up in a way like, hey, we're going to give you the answers to this, this part of the test. We're going to give you a cheat sheet. We're going to give you the study guide. This is how you need to solve these problems. And maybe it is outside of the current technical directives and technical regulations, but they need to do something. Something has to happen.
I agree.
Something has to happen. And it was really hard to watch Lewis get out of that car today.
Yeah. And it's just like, just watching it. It's just not fun to watch that issue. It's just not fun.
No.
Like, as a spectator watching, and you're like, oh my God, like, oh God, I would hate to be in that car.
I'd be sick.
Yeah.
I'd be car sick. I'd be motion sick. Yeah. There's no way. Last thing, let's get away from the hot takes. Last thing on our list of things to talk about is, as always, the meme of the week. And it has to be Yuki Tsunoda's rear wing, simply because Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport engineering. And to fix the problem, the engineers used duct tape.
It kind of reminded me like a little bit of like NASCAR, like when drivers like hit the wall, like dent the bumper, like they just put like a massive amount of like duct tape on the car to fix it. And I saw this one image, and it was like this massive like crack in a wall, and someone just like has one strip of duct tape over it.
Yeah.
So like it was really funny. It was pretty funny.
It's just so funny. It was so funny to sit there and watch. I was like, they pulled in the pit, and they like black and orange flag came out. And I was like, how are they going to fix this? And then I saw them coming out with duct tape, and I was like, no way. That's insane. That is so funny. So shout out to the AlphaTauri engineers on Yuki Tsunoda's side of the garage to keep him in the race and keep him from getting black flagged. I guess they did enough.
That's like some redneck, something like, oh, we're just putting some duct tape on it.
Yeah,
that'll fix it.
Yeah. So that was really funny. All in all, very up and down.
It also reminded me, that TikTok sounds like, I know what's wrong with it. It ain't got no gas in it.
Yep.
And it just like cuts to like something that's completely destroyed. That's what it reminded me of.
Yep. So
good
all
good
in all, an up and down weekend, depending on who you ask. for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and the races are piling on fast. We will be back in 1 week's time for the Canadian Grand Prix. So stick around. Be sure to follow us on all of our social medias. Check us out on everything. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. What are your thoughts on the Azerbaijan Grand Prix? And we will see you next time.
Yep, we look forward to it. We'll see you after Canada.